Hello everyone, today we'll be watching Wilhelm Gustloff Recreating the Disasters Episode 3. Let's watch.
Now the lifeboats are attempting to launch and they're failing with at least some of them. And that's because not only is the water coming up, but the davits and the equipment are frozen. Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are back with recreating the disasters. Today we're focusing on the Wilhelm Gustloff. So yeah guys, let's get into the video. Alright, so here we have the Wilhelm Gustloff, and if you don't know what the Wilhelm Gustloff is, I'm going to hand it over to Jay Killen to talk about it.
Yeah, so the Wilhelm Gustloff was launched on May 5th, 1937, and it was a purpose-built cruise ship for the German labor front. From 1939 to 1940, the Wilhelm Gustloff served as a hospital ship, officially designated as the Lazarettschiff D. At the end of 1940, in November, medical equipment was removed, and she was repainted to the standard naval gray color. Because of the blockade of the German coastline by the Allied powers, she was used as a barrack ship instead for 1,000 U-boat trainees in the port of Gdynia, which was occupied by Germany and was renamed to Gutenhafen. The ship sat in port for over 4 years. During Operation Hannibal, which was the naval evacuation for German troops and civilians from the regions of Poland and the Baltic states as Soviet troops advanced, the Wilhelm Gustloff was put back into service to help transport these civilians and military personnel.
So yeah, that brings...
Mama, I will protect you.
Civilians and military personnel.
So yeah, that brings us up to where we are now, and we'll be leaving in a couple minutes, but before we do, I have to talk about the ship getting a revamp. Now, if you haven't already seen the revamp for the Wilhelm Gustloff, it is amazing. It's got almost full interior for the superstructure, and I'll put up a couple photos so you can actually see what the interior looks like. These are some photos I got before I started recording, but yeah, this is amazing stuff. I was not anticipating this at all when I heard that it actually got a revamp. And yeah, I totally recommend you check this out. There's a lot of spaces to explore, but we're about to leave, so yeah. And I already know that Jay Killen is in a submarine waiting to torpedo us, because that's what happened to the Wilhelm Gustloff, but I'll let Jay Killen explain in a little bit. First, we're going to go ahead and leave, and then, yeah, we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, so the Wilhelm Gustloff actually departed from Gutenhafen on January 30th in 1945, carrying more than 10,000 people. The ship was actually controlled by 4 captains who ended up disagreeing with each other about the best course of action for protection against submarines, in which they argued between following a course closer to the shore for a lower risk of Soviet submarines in the area, but a higher risk of naval mines, or to follow a path in deeper waters that was known to have been cleared of mines, but with a higher risk of being detected by Soviet submarines. And it was decided that they would follow the path in deeper waters.
So yeah, we're basically going to recreate that path. Now, since we don't actually have this specific land in the game, we're just going to be going from Southampton to Cherbourg, and we'll just pretend that that is the types of waters the ship was going through. Now, we are going to now turn our lights off, because we want to stay sort of stealthy in these waters. We know that there are submarines around, we know that there could be enemy ships around, so we want to keep a low profile. Now, that will change in a little bit, but for now, we're going to sail through the waters. We're going to hope to not hit any mines, which is basically what the Wilhelm Gustloff was actually trying to avoid, as Jay Killen just said. So we're choosing the deeper water, and maybe that will save us from the mines, but it definitely will not save us from the submarines, as we will find out later. Unlike in the game right now, the conditions on board and around the Wilhelm Gustloff were not favorable whatsoever. The ship had been loaded up with over 10,000 refugees, and there was really no sitting room. You had to be standing in public spaces, in corridors, in cabins, because they were so overpacked.
During the voyage, the Wilhelm Gustloff received word of 3 oncoming German minesweepers, which led them to turn the navigation lights on because of the low visibility. But not long after, the Soviet submarine S-13 spotted the Wilhelm Gustloff and followed the ship off to the starboard side for about 2 hours after that.
Now, I'm not sure if I can just turn on the navigation lights in Tiny Sailor's World. If I can, let me know down below, because that would be very helpful. But right now, I'm just turning on all the lights to replicate what happened with the navigation lights being turned on. So there should be a submarine out here looking for me, and I think Jake Hillen should be nearby as well, because we've been sailing for a little while now with the lights on, and that's always concerning, especially when we're in sort of a wartime situation. Now, unfortunately for the Wilhelm Gustloff, the submarine has just passed around to their port side, but they don't know this. Their submarine detector has been frozen up with ice, as well as the lifeboat davits, and also some of the machinery on the deck. So it's really not going to be good for the ship in the next few minutes. So Jake Hillen, do you want to explain what's about to happen?
So yeah, after the submarine surfaced and sailed around the ship's stern, they loaded 4 torpedoes. 3 torpedoes were launched successfully, but the 4th one was jammed in the firing tube. The first torpedo struck in the bow, which caused the watertight doors to seal off where the off-duty crew members were actually sleeping. And the second one struck near the drained swimming pool that was designated for the Women's Naval Auxiliary, which ended up dislodging pool tiles at a fast velocity that caused extensive casualties. And the third and final torpedo struck the engine room and disabled the ship's lights and communications. And like what was said before, it was cold, and it was said that the sea was around 0 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit. And after the sinking, more than 9,000 people died by either the explosions, drowning, or rapidly freezing in the water or cold weather, which ended up leading this ship to be the worst disaster in history.
Exactly, and great point bringing up the temperatures. This is much colder than the situation that Titanic's passengers faced. There was very little time to stay alive in those waters, and it would get worse, and we'll explain in a moment why it would. But first, we're about to experience the torpedo attack, or the submarine attack, that's about to happen, and it's very fitting because a blizzard has just spawned in. So, Jake Hillen, whenever you're ready, the ship is moving at slow speed now, so if you're ready to replicate it, I'm ready. We won't actually be taking damage for this because we're just going to be simulating the torpedoes hitting the ship. So there's the first one. You should be seeing the second one very soon.
Forward employee pricing is back. You can get my price on this escape. Forward employee pricing won't last long.
There it is, and boom, and one more to go. And there is the last one. All right, so we are now beginning to sink. Well, we're going to see the torpedoes hit again because Sink by Simulation also recreates the torpedo explosions, but we wanted to do it with our real submarine because that's more realistic. So we'll wait for these to go by, and then the sinking should start. Now, with these torpedo collisions, there's a massive amount of water entering the ship. It's not like the Titanic, where it was a small seam opening up, water slowly pouring in, and almost controllable. This was a very uncontrollable sinking. There was a lot of water making its way through the hallways and interior spaces of the ship. And again, have to bring up the fact that there were hundreds, thousands of people crammed into these cabins and hallways and open spaces. And once they tried to run out all at once, it was a stampede. There were scenes of horror in hallways where people were trying to escape and people were trampled to death because they couldn't get up the stairs all at once. They started falling over each other. It was just a huge mess. And as you can see, the ship is already rolled over. This is a really bad situation already. The ship is severely unstable. It's taking on, again, huge amounts of water. And already that promenade is flooded. So you can imagine that promenade leads into so many interior spaces in the ship. And that's just going to take the ship down even further. Now the lifeboats are attempting to launch, and they're failing, at least some of them. And that's because not only is the water coming up, but the davits and the equipment are frozen. There has been freezing rain and snow for a couple hours now, and that has coated everything with a thin layer of ice, and it's making it difficult to actually lower the boats. The bridge is now gone. The funnel has collapsed. I'm not sure if the funnel would have collapsed in real life, but there it goes. And the ship is going down. Now, not to mention, the decks are probably incredibly slippery with this thin coat of ice, and people are sliding down the decks. It is a very, very bad situation, and she is about to hit bottom. Now, there she goes. She has just struck bottom. Now, the wreck is on the bottom, but there is still people on the surface that are alive, and unfortunately, they are either going to freeze to death, or they are going to be killed by the rescue ships. So the ships that were coming onto the scene actually ran over some of the survivors and killed them. They also dropped depth charges because, obviously, there was a submarine around, and that also killed several survivors in the water, several hundred in fact. So it really was an awful situation, and there will never be that accurate toll like there was on Titanic or other ship disasters. So yeah, but that has been the Wilhelm Gustloff. If you guys have enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like and a comment.
Okay guys, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.